The OPEC members are saying the United States has plenty of spare capacity to increase oil supply, help keep the economy going. Why is he not doing that? Why is he not increasing oil supply?
So the U.S. operates on a competitive free market system, as you know, Steve, and individual companies make their own decisions. OPEC Plus is a collection of countries that set supply levels themselves. They have the capacity and the power now to act and make sure this critical moment of global recovery is not impaired. And to be clear, OPEC Plus production is what impacts global oil prices, which is what has an effect on gas prices at home.
President Biden is calling these reports about the administration paying up to $450,000 to illegal immigrants who are separated from family members garbage. He says it's not going to happen. But the ACLU says that it is. So who is right?
Wait, are you talking about the question you asked him yesterday?
Yes.
So if it saves taxpayer dollars and puts the disastrous history of the previous administration's use of zero tolerance and family separation behind us, the president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government. DOJ can obviously speak more to that process. The president what he was reacting to was the dollar figure that was mentioned, that you mentioned to him yesterday. As press accounts to date indicate, there's been press accounts on this, DOJ made clear to the plaintiffs that the reported figures are higher than anywhere that a settlement can land. Again, this is something that the Department of Justice can speak to. I do not have anything more to add to this.
But if he's not okay with $450,000, how much money is he okay giving? This is
Peter, this is something that the Department of Justice is going to handle. I just laid out what he was thinking and how the process was moving forward. The DOJ will talk to the specifics of this.
So what changed then from yesterday? You're saying that he would be perfectly comfortable settling with these families who broke the law to come here, but yesterday he said that's not going to happen.
First of all, let's remember how we got here, how we got to a place where we're dealing with families being separated. This is coming from the last administration. This is what we're trying to deal with here in this administration. So let's be very clear of how we got here and what's happening. Anything else that you would like to know about this, again, I'll send you to the Department of Justice. I can't speak to specifics.
Up to $450,000 each, possibly $1 million per family. Do you think that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report?
Yeah.
Okay. So
$450,000 per person. Is that what you're saying?
That was separated from a family member at the border under the last administration.
That's not going to happen.
And so you just said that his main kind of objection was to the amount of money, but you said that he would be okay if DOJ, works it out and reaches a settlement. He would trust that DOJ process. Would he be okay if that settlement also included a pathway to citizenship or any immigration relief for those parents?
I'm not going to get ahead of this, so I would point you to the Department of Justice.
If you're able to say publicly that he would object to that $450,000, I guess my question is, if DOJ goes through their independent process, finalizes a settlement that includes a pathway to citizenship, would he object to that?
So DOJ made clear to the plaintiffs that the reported figures are higher than anywhere that this settlement can land. Like, that's what DOJ said today.
Was the president briefed by DOJ about the settlement discussions, and was it appropriate for him to weigh in on a DOJ process when he's emphasized the department's independence?
The president believes in the department's independence, right? And that is something that he has been very clear about. The Department of Justice should be independent. He was asked a question and he answered it directly. That's it. He was asked a question and he answered it. There's nothing much more to add to that.
How did concerns about the supply chain, the possibility of workers maybe quitting because of these mandates, play into that decision and that timing?
So, if you're asking, if we think the rules impact supply chain, the answer is no. We don't think that it will.
How confident is the White House these will hold up in court with a lot of GOP states threatening legal action?
So we're pretty confident. The administration clearly has the authority to protect workers. DOJ will be defining these laws.
Spanberger, a Democratic congresswoman from Virginia, is issuing a warning about the president's sweeping agenda today, telling the New York Times, quote, "Nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal and stop the chaos." Has he seen that quote, and what is the president's response?
You know, I don't know if the president has seen that quote. I'll say this. It's been reported, the way that we see it, one of the best arguments for the Build Back Better Act is that 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics agree that it will reduce inflationary pressures. And the Wall Street analytics from Moody's said the same. Build Back Better, as we have said, is fully paid for and will even reduce the deficit over the long term.
Quote, she seems to be saying the president is trying to do too much, too fast, and has an agenda that is bigger than what voters wanted the president to do and why they put him in office. Does he agree with that? Did Tuesday night reaffirm
Caitlin,
that?
I'll say this, the president has been talking about his Build Back Better agenda for over a year. 81 million people voted almost a year ago.
The Moody's report that you guys are using to backing up your claims that it's all paid for and that it'll help pay down inflation also makes an interesting point about, it says its most serious concern with the legislation is around execution risk, or that is that it is a complex piece of legislation, quote, with lots of massive moving parts. Successfully organizing them would be difficult even among the best managed private companies. Scaling up existing programs as envisioned in the legislation is one thing, standing up new programs and tax policy is another. They say later it's especially the case for much of the new policy related to addressing climate change. The last time Democrats implemented a big bill, this president had an expression for it, there were some implementation problems. What would this administration say about its preparations for implementing all this?
Well, as you can imagine, Ed, this is incredibly important to the president, right? This is something, as I mentioned to Caitlin, that he's been working on or talking about for over a year now. And so, we're going to do everything that we can.
And we obtained a 9-page Homeland Security plan from July that would end the Title 42 border policy for families with children, but our reporting has found from several presidential appointees that the plan was scrapped because top White House officials, including Susan Rice, expressed concern about the political optics of unwinding this pandemic policy. What would you say to critics of the administration's immigration policy, medical professionals who say Title 42 is junk science, even Democrats, the political considerations are guiding this administration's border policy?
So I'll, as you know, and when you talk about the kind of the disagreement within the administration, first, I'm not going to get into or respond to the gossip from here. That's not something that we're going to do. Every single member of this administration.
Several presidential appointees, I wouldn't call it gossip.
Okay, that's your opinion. But every single member of this administration, from the president on down, is committed to building a fair and orderly immigration system.
And while you guys were overseas, the intel community said basically that they're stuck and can't figure out how it originated because Beijing continues to hinder the global investigation. So would President Biden punish China in some way for that?
Well, as you know, the ODNI, the COVID origins report, the president received that not too long ago. So I'll speak to that because that's the closest to what we have at the moment to talk to that. So this administration has been clear that it is imperative for the global scientific community to understand the genesis, and we and our partners will continue to press for transparency and answers from the PRC on key outstanding questions on the origins of the pandemic and its early days in China. For any additional details and assessments, we refer you to ODNI, but we're going to continue pressing because we do have to get to the bottom of it.
Given the administration has gotten a pretty clear rebuff from OPEC on the president's calls to increase oil outputs, will the administration commit to an SPR release, a strategic petroleum release? And if not, will oil prices just go higher?
So I'll say I'll say this, and you've heard Jen say it behind this podium. We are not a party of OPEC plus.
That includes an SPR release?
I don't have anything specifics, but we are going to use every tool at our disposal to make sure that we address this.
And does this show the limits of American influence on some of the U.S. allies? Because obviously the administration put a lot of pressure on some of these oil-producing countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Does this show some of the limits of the U.S.?
I mean, I wouldn't characterize it that way, but we're going to continue to work on this.
When he went to Capitol Hill last Thursday, why didn't he call for a vote on that day when he met with House Democrats?
Well, to your question about which one about the economy, it was. I'm so sorry.
When he went to meet with House Democrats last week, why didn't he call for a vote on the infrastructure bill on that day?
I'm not going to get into private conversations that has been had in that room a week ago, as you just stated. But there are so many reasons to. It's complicated. It's a complex. It's not like one answer. Hi. I know it's been a slow news day these last couple days. So I know you guys, have not missed the briefing at all.
The president had a chance to speak to the governor-elect of Virginia yet. And if not, does he plan to do that?
So they have not spoken, but the president congratulates Governor-elect Youngkin on his win. Obviously, the president campaigned for his friend Terry McAuliffe. As he mentioned yesterday, you heard directly from him about having that conversation and would have preferred a different outcome, but the will of the people is clear. And
it was not a good night. So let's just not go away from that.